Good morning. My name is Maya Austin, and I did my action research study on the effects of grapheme phoneme instruction. So I'm going to start with my table of contents. First, we'll have our introduction, the problem that I addressed, the question that I attempted to answer, what I learned from conducting my literature review, my action plan, my results, how I will use the results, things I would do differently, what I learned from doing the action research project, my new problem that I identified, and then my references and my thanks to the person who created the template for the Google slide. So my introduction. I completed my action research study through the virtual setting in Google Meets. My students met with me in breakout rooms, and I had to do this because the COVID-19 cases have increased in DeKalb County, Georgia, so we are still learning all virtually. Right, the problem that I attempted to address. Students who experience difficulty when reading have trouble reading sight words. These same students tend to experience difficulty when learning how to read sight words. So my question that I attempted to answer, what are the effects of grapheme phoneme instruction on kindergarten students' sight word reading ability? So what I learned by doing my literature review. I learned that whole word storage is learning to automatically read words by sight and through word lists or flashcards. So as teachers, we are using whole word storage when we teach our students sight words through flashcards and word lists, and we're asking them to just memorize the entire word. I also learned what is storage of grapheme phoneme relations. That is learning the spelling, pronunciation, and meaning of words to store them in memory. So teachers, that is when we teach our students how to decode words instead of asking them to memorize the whole word. Is when we show them how to segment and blend the phonemes in a word so that they can read it and it becomes a part of their memory instead of just memorizing the entire word. I also learned that most sight words can be decoded and are regularly spelled. Um, there are some temporary irregularly spelled words, but those words can become regularly spelled once we teach our students those spelling patterns. All right. And then there are just a few permanently irregularly spelled words, and we just have to teach those students why they are permanently irregular and how they can read them. And I also learned that words are best stored in memory through visual phonological connections formed between the spelling and pronunciation of words. I also learned that it may be helpful if students are more familiar with their letters and sounds before they are taught to read sight words or just words in general. They need to be able to identify most letters and tell us what sound those make so that they can segment and blend those sounds to form words. All right, my action plan. So before my participants could even start the study, I needed to be sure that they could identify most of the letters of the alphabet, uppercase and lowercase, and that they could identify the sounds that those letters make. So all of my participants can at least identify 50 or more of the 52 letters, and they know at least 20 of the 26 sounds. All right. And so then once I deemed that they were eligible, then I got consent from their parents so that they could participate. They were given informed consent to participate. And then at the beginning of each session, the students would verbally tell me if they wanted to continue with the study. Um, and then the participants were tested on the sight words at the beginning of the study on the Dolch sight word list. And then 6 sessions of interventions were provided. I wanted to do 12, but due to a lack of time, we were only able to, I was only able to implement 6 intervention sessions. 15 target words were taught during those sessions. Each session, we focused on 5 words. The participants were prompted to segment the phonemes in each word using their fingers. So my plan was for students to practice phoneme segmentation with those words using the Elkanin boxes. But about 2 of my students could not locate their Elkanin boxes that they received at the beginning of the year. So I had to modify my plan and really have them focus on tapping out those phonemes using their fingers. So they were shown the word using Google Slides, then I would prompt them to say it, and then I would prompt them to tap it out the phonemes using their fingers, and then I would remove the word from the screen, and they were prompted to write it down on their whiteboard or piece of paper if they did not have or could not locate their whiteboard. Um, so once the participants wrote each word, I would put the word back on the screen so that they could check their spelling. And then I would also address any misconceptions at that time. And this process was repeated for each word. And at the end of my study, the participants were tested on the sight words that appear on the Dolch Primer sight word list. My results. So I have my bar graph here that shows the participants' target scores on the pre-assessment and post-assessment. So the target scores is just how many words did they read correctly out of those 15 words that I taught them throughout the interventions. Each participant's target score increased from the pre-test to the post-test. The most growth occurred in the participants' target score from the pre-assessment to the post-assessment. So that just means that my participants were able to read more of the words that I taught during the interventions than they were other words that were not taught. All right, and then here are the results of the participants' number of Dolch Primer sight words that they could read correctly overall. And each participant's overall number of sight words read correctly did increase from the pre-assessment to the post-assessment, but I just want to reiterate that the most growth occurred in their target scores. They were able to read more of those target words correctly than they were the other words that appeared on the Dolch Primer sight word list. All right, and then here are just some pictures of their pre and post assessments. Here's students 1, student 2's, and student 3's pre-assessment and post-assessment. Our result uses. I plan on sharing my results with my principal, my colleagues, the participants, and their parents. When I was testing them during their pre and post, I usually give them that data right away. I like to tell my students, hey, 20 sight words so that they know their data and they know what they need to work on. I will continue to teach sight words and regular words to the participants and my other students by using these strategies that were implemented during the study. Now, as I reflect on this, I think I'm going to use strategies that encourage whole word storage and strategies that encourage the storage of grapheme phoneme relations. I'm going to kind of use those in combination because I see that some students are learning words as they see it through whole word storage, where some students benefit from receiving that grapheme phoneme instruction. So I plan on using both so that I can meet everyone's needs. Okay, things I would do differently. I would implement the intervention for a much longer period of time. I would work with more participants. I only worked with 3 during this study, so it's kind of hard to apply it to other kindergartners because it was only 3 participants. I will prepare for absences by planning more intervention sessions. All of my participants were not able to attend each intervention session because they may have had internet connectivity issues or their technology may have been glitching that day. So I want to, next time when I do this study, if I do this study again, I would plan for more intervention sessions, and my goal would be for each participant to at least attend 12 intervention sessions. And then I would hand deliver the materials that are needed for the intervention. I am learning that as we do this virtual learning, things that may have been handed out at the beginning of the school year may not last for 2, 3, 4 months. So we may end up having to, unfortunately, constantly give out new things so that they can have it in the household for virtual learning. What did I learn from the action research process? I learned that the steps of action research tend to overlap and they are fluid, and they may also occur out of order. I evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of my plan throughout the entire process of this action research study. As soon as I started to implement these interventions, I started noticing what I would have to modify. Students may not have had the dry erase markers. They're dried out. Okay, we're going to have to use paper and pencil. You can't find your Elkonin boxes. Okay, we're really going to have to tap out these phonemes. And then I also realized my problem early on, a new problem that my students were facing, and that was blending phonemes. They could segment, but they had trouble blending those phonemes together. And I identified that maybe in the second or third intervention session. So that's a new problem that I could start a whole new action research study on. But all of that happened throughout the implementation process. It did not happen at the end, like it was stated in the text. And the text actually told us that these steps are going to overlap and they're fluid. So that is really what I learned and what I witnessed. My new problem, as I mentioned before, the participants' ability to segment phonemes and words improved as a result of the interventions, but they struggled with blending those phonemes and words. So, McHergy and Albon state that action research occurs in a cycle, and that the last step of the action research process is to evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of the action plan and then identify a new problem. But they also say that the steps of action research are a little messy. They tend to overlap and they're fluid. So once I started doing these interventions, I realized that my participants were having problems and they were struggling with blending those phonemes. They could segment and tell you the letters and what sound each letter made, but they had problems blending and putting those phonemes together. So if I wanted to, I could start a whole nother action research study addressing that problem the kindergarten students have with blending the phonemes in words, and it would start all over again. So it really helped me to witness that cycle of action research. It can go on, and it really solidified that notion that early childhood practice is complex. There's no right or wrong solutions. There's no easy fixes. It's a revolving door, and as an educator, we just have to learn different strategies that we can use to address all of our students' needs, and we just have to keep learning different things that we can do. And that's really what I learned from doing action research and identifying a new problem. All right, thank you so much for listening. These are my references, and this is my thanks to the company that created these slides. Thank you so much for listening.